Hi everyone, welcome to this very wet and windy day here in Wales, and it seems very appropriate that we are going to paint some water today. So I have my setup here. I've got a piece of watercolour paper. You can use acrylic paper if you want to, if you're going to use acrylics, that is. I've just masked off the edges and stuck it down so it doesn't curl up. I've got a palette. I've got several scraping tools and brushes, some watercolour pencils and some watercolour paint and some gouache, or you can use acrylic and a little bit of a rag. Okay, I've just realised that I haven't got any water, so I'll just go and get some. Okay, so now I have water, the most essential thing. Anyway, okay, so this is going to be quite a freestyle image making process. So we've got several colours. I've got them in tubes, but if you've got them in pans, then that's okay. I'm just going to squeeze out a few bits and bobs onto a plate. I've got burnt umber, yellow ochre, black, burnt sienna, red, crimson red, bright red, orange and white. You don't necessarily need those colours, but those are the ones I've chosen for today. So if you've got them, then that's great. If you've got alternatives, then just use those, okay? So the first thing to do is to take some yellow ochre, and we're going to paint the sky, a little bit of the sky. And we need to get that down first. So a bit of yellow ochre, and I've got a large round brush, and I'm just going to, I haven't drawn it out because I'm going to do it sort of freestyle. I don't want to draw it out. I want it to be loose and I want it to be free. So I'm not going to draw it out. So all you need to do is just apply a little bit of this yellow ochre to the top, the very top of your painting, and make it slightly darker just at the bottom of that section. When I say darker, I just mean put some more pigment there. Okay, so you've got it lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. Very loose again. Okay, and then we're going to take some let's see, burnt sienna, which is a red brown colour. I've got different brands here that I'm working with. This is a Reeves watercolour. The last one was a Dale Rowney Artist's Quality yellow ochre. And we're just going to wash that. Now, if you want to add some orange in at the same time, then do so. That's if my orange will come out. You can see this is very dried up, but it's trying. There we go. So this is just cheap, probably from a pound store somewhere. It doesn't say orange on it, but it, you know, has a number. Okay, and if you've got Payne's grey, then great. If not, use black. I'm just going to squeeze that out again onto my palette. Payne's grey gives you a much richer colour. That's black, orange and burnt sienna. Okay, using the same brush, I'm just going to take first of all a little bit of orange, and again, it doesn't matter if these colours mix up on your palette. You just want a very, so I'm just going to put some orange down here. You can see how loosely I'm putting it on. Some up here. So your painting won't be exactly the same as mine. Just allow it to be its own thing. Okay, and if it blends into the sky a bit, don't worry. So the orange is just going to lift it a little. So just look at where are those, there's a sort of shape coming down here. So use your brush to describe that shape. Okay, and then I'm going to go into the burnt sienna, which is your red brown. And I'm going to put some of that in here as well. And look at the direction of the rocks. Some of them are coming downwards. Some of them are coming across. imagine what's underneath those surfaces. Okay, you can see where it's dark and where it's lighter, but just very loosely put in some of those colours like this. Okay, and then finally I'm going to go in with the black, and again, if the black is too harsh, then just now here you can knock it back, should I say, that's what I was about to say. So just here you need to be quite, you might not be able to get this too close to your yellow ochre. So if you are getting a lot of bleeding, just leave it, let it run a little bit, but you don't want it to run a great deal. So you can see there's a mark there and a mark there, and then a mark coming down here where the rock is. And again, we've got these vertical strokes here. So just play about with the mark making. We've got some, if you want to introduce some more browns rather than blacks, then you can. If you want to introduce some more colours, this is your opportunity to do that. Again, it's very loose. Don't let your hand become too stiff. Move around the picture and just enjoy laying these colours down and getting the darkness in the bottom especially, and flick in places like this. Put thick colour down in places like this. I think maybe I will. You can see where it's softening. Oh, actually that's quite lovely. That has run, but actually I'm enjoying what's going on up here. This is the beauty of watercolour, is that you can sort of celebrate your accidents. I'm going to draw it across here though, just so it doesn't end too quickly. Okay, I am going to take some burnt umber and just work it in a little bit. That's if it'll come out of my, yeah, it's going to come out of my tube. I'm just going to take some burnt umber and just use some of that darker brown just to soften some of these edges here and up here. And again, use some flicky marks, draw some of it up into the sky there. You don't want to do your trees just yet, just the main parts of the, and again just flick up in places. Okay, so I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to put a little bit of brown in here, just in there, just to break up that corner. Okay, now leave that. You can see these are forming trees already. I'm quite loving that. So if you've got any places where you don't want colour, just draw it out. So if it's getting too dark, like that, if it's running too much, like this, then just draw it across, encourage it in a different direction, like that. Just softly, but you must use a clean brush each time. All right, like that. Now, the other thing to play with is mark making. So if you've got any tools that you can mark make with, then get yourself going with those while it's still wet. So you need to think about this before you start. Make sure that all these tools are ready to go, that you've got a variety of tools, because they'll all make different marks. Okay, and you can see that scratching into that is really beautiful. You can actually score the paper, and you can use things like razor blades and so on and so forth. So get a variety of tools. I've got this bit of card here with a crimpling edge on, and I'm just going to draw that across and see what happens with that. And you know, you can sort of scrape it up and down like this, see? So there's all sorts of tools. I've got ink pens, things like that, so I can just increase and decrease the mark making that's happening in these sections. So again, you know, this is play, it's not precise. Enjoy the process. Don't worry about whether you're doing it right or not. Just enjoy it, okay? If you make mistakes or if you don't like certain areas, you can always take some of your paint and paint over. So like, you know, or paint into things, you know, there's no rules here. Okay, so you can take some solid paint, some smaller brushes maybe, and just add to certain areas and just bring certain areas out. But it's supposed to be a very organic, free image. Okay, so don't overwork it. I'm just going to take a smaller brush here and just going to add in some extra marks. So I've got a fine detailed brush here, and I just want to be a little bit more precise. Now you'll see that actually this doesn't make that much difference in a minute, because we're going to work over the top of this. So okay, so we're done with that bit. I'm happy with what's going on there. There's a slight mark up here, but I'm not bothered. I think that looks quite nice. You know, just accept it for what it is. You might want to leave it to dry off a bit, but the next stage is to put some gouache on. Now, if you've got gouache, then all great, but if you haven't, then you can use acrylic paint. Okay, I'm just going to get another palette. So either use acrylic white or gouache. I'm using gouache because you can sort of play about with it a bit more. It's a bit more expensive than the acrylic, which is a bit of a pain, but you know, you can manipulate it a bit more, whereas with acrylic you can't. You can only paint over acrylic. Okay, so with this I'm going to take the edge of a piece of card, okay, and I'm going to dip it into the acrylic here, like into the gouache. Now you might find that it's a little bit thick, so just mix it up. You can use a palette knife for this if you want to, if you'd rather. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up big blobs of it and I'm just going to smear it. So you want this feeling that this water's coming down. Pick up some more, smear it on, and remember, on waterfalls there are ledges. Okay, so there would be ledges, rocks, where the water is seeping over. Don't worry if your paint comes into it. Just get it on and get that real nice curve down the bottom there. Okay, this is quite adventurous. You might not be very comfortable with how you're putting it on, but just be brave and have a go. Okay, you can see that the thickness of paint is already working to my advantage here. I'm going to also just put in a little bit more at the top here. It is bleeding, but I'm all right with that. Don't worry about it. Okay, so you've got some, so you can go back in with your brush and you can put in some more precise areas if you feel like you need them, or if you feel like you need a block or a bit of thicker paint, so on and so forth. Okay, so we're just going to put in some. Okay, so now we can go back in and we can take our colours that we've got left here and we can use these to our advantage. So just a touch into your white of, I've got burnt sienna there. I'm just going to start to apply little bits of it here and there on my, you can take darker bits and just put them around the place. I like the orange in there, so I'm going to put a little bit. obviously the rocks would be reflecting, the water would be reflecting the rocks. So let it include some colour in the water, just to sort of give it the feeling of reflection of the rocks. So there's a little bit of density up there. There's a bit more just in there. And you can see that some of the marks are coming off now. So next thing is scratching again. So you want to come back in with one of your tools, whatever tool you fancy, and you want to start to sort of scratch and bring some of those marks into the water, and also bring some of the marks that are in the water to life with your scratching tools. So you can sort of drag upwards into like this, and you can make some marks in that wet paint. Again, don't go overboard and don't fuss too much about the final result. You want to just sort of allow it to expose itself from the paint. So think about how that water's falling. How is it falling down that rock face? Is it coming in from the side? How's it coming over the edge there? Just, there is a sort of top to it. Let it flow. Okay. I'm sort of quite happy with that, so I'm going to leave it to dry a bit. I'm just looking. The really important thing is that you look at your work, that you look and you make decisions, and you give it time to sort of dry a little bit. You give it time to settle. You know, you can pick up tools, paint onto the work as it's drying off. But you can also wait and paint onto it after it's dried. If you feel like it's getting out of control, then wait a little while and paint onto it after it's dried off a bit. You know, you might find that you're getting a mess with this, and that you want to start again, that you want to do it again and again and again. You know, it's something that you could do on a small scale and build up on. You could have 2 or 3 of these going at the same time. You can focus like there. I just put a dark patch, and what that's done is it's brought out this edge, which gives it a little bit more movement. So look for these darker patches of colour and enhance them. Often a lot of people's finished paintings are all sort of one tone, and they need to darken things up. I'm always saying darken up. So you want some darks and some lights, just like you would in a photograph. A successful photograph always has really dark blacks in it and really light, really bright whites. So again, just push this paint around. Again, you're not following me. The best thing for you to do is to watch this and then sort of almost make an image up of your own. You can't possibly replicate what I'm doing here, but you can make something similar. See, that bit there is a bit wet and I wanted to harden that edge off a bit. So I need to wait for that to dry. Okay, so I'm going to go into the brown. Oops. Just going to try and solidify this edge and see if it will. See, again, it's sort of a bit wet, so I'm going to leave it to dry. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the film here, and then I'm going to come back to it when it's a bit dry. Okay, so now it's a bit drier. I can also rest my hand on it, which helps. And I'm just going to carefully look in this area here and just put some black in, black or Payne's grey, just to give this edge of the waterfall a little bit of definition. So I'm just going in. I'm not going to eradicate everything that I've done there. I'm just going to softly put in some extra marks just to give that edge. I'm just going to bring it actually a little bit further, like that. But like I said, you've got to be careful with this because you've put all this lovely loose work in and you want to be able to retain it. So don't just paint over it. You know, all this lovely scratching under here, I don't want to get rid of that. I just want to put some paint back in just around here, just to give an idea of where this rock face comes in. But carefully, rather than, you know, try not to lose those lovely marks that you've made. And again, if you choose to use a different colour, use a different colour. You don't have to use black. You can see these beautiful marks that are happening here. You know, this is like the water is doing what it's supposed to do, which is sort of bubbling and flowing over these edges. And it's happened by accident here, which is really gorgeous. So don't get rid of it. Really important that you look really closely at these lines and keep as many as possible. So I'm using the browns, mainly the browns, and the black here, the burnt umber and the black. I'm just putting some detail into that foreground, just because it needs to be a bit harder. There's a rock here that I have missed, but whether you put it back in really is up to you. And it doesn't have to follow the image. You can just make it up and almost read what's happening underneath. So think, right, that could be a sort of bubbly bit around that section of water there. And then it would come down to a ledge here of sorts. So yeah, just look at what you've created and make sense of what's going on already, rather than trying to follow the image perfectly. So what's happening here is it's coming over that top ridge. Now again, I'm just going to put a slight suggestion of colour there and just a couple of marks. I don't want to, you know, exaggerate that too much because it is in the distance and we don't want it to stand out. I'm not outlining it, otherwise it ends up looking like a cartoon. There is a rock there coming over here, but I love the marks here so much I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to add a little bit of colour onto that edge there, just to give that a bit of definition and bring it down. But again, I'm going to work with what I've got. That's a lovely bit there. So I'm just going to soften that in to my already beautiful section there. That's quite a nice bit. I'm enjoying the way that's coming down there, but I would like some more colour there. So I'm going to go into the orange that I've got here left over, and I'm just going to put in a few more branches coming out of that and into the water, maybe like this, just to give it a little bit more colour and energy up that, and up here as well. I'm just going to bring in some more of that orange just to give it a little bit more. But again, just be aware, don't overwork it. I don't want to see hundreds of orange branches. You just want to have subtle suggestions of colour here and there, not too detailed. Now I think I'm getting a little bit over fussy with the detail around the water, so I'm going to go back into the water now, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this. It's ended up being a bit grey because it's mixed with a bit of the gouache. Okay, at this stage I'm just going to use a touch of red. You could use the orange, but I'm just going to use a touch of red, and I've managed to get loads of it on my hands because I think this tube is leaking. There, see, always have rags at the ready. So because I want this this colour to be a bit less grey, so I'm just going to add a touch of red into it, and maybe a touch of that orange as well. Well, that's a bit strong. Can you see that's a bit strong? But just keep playing with it until you get something that you're after. And I'm just going to start to add a little bit. Now with this, if it looks a bit dark, don't worry. I'm just going to put touches of it here and there. Again, you could use purple. You don't want to make it muddy. So I'm now going to wash my brush off, and I'm just going to soften those tones in. It looks like you're doing nothing, but just basically put some water back in so they don't look like they're too hard. Okay. I'm a bit worried about this section here. Not worried, but you know, bothered by it. So I need my, where's my brush gone? There. So I'm going to bring a rock out. I'm going to bring this, because it goes over and then it comes out. So I'm going to bring an orange rock in here and see if it makes any difference. Again, incorporate it into whatever you've painted already. Just give it some there. So that is, yeah, that's making a little bit more sense. I'm going to drag a bit of the colour out, clean brush. Just going to drag a little bit of colour out into the waterfall, just so it makes, it's not too disjointed between the two. I'm going to put a little bit of orange down here. A little bit more orange in here. Again, the sort of brighter tones, they help to just lift areas if they've become a little dull. So allow them to happen. Horizontal marks for where it looks like it's going flat, and vertical marks where it's not. That's quite flat, that's quite good. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. Just going to take a little bit more black. Maybe we'll put a bit of yellow ochre into it. Let's see what happens with that. Things with yellow ochre is it tends to go green a bit when you're mixing it with black. There's a bit of purple there, which I haven't got any blue on me, but you know, you've got to work with the colours that you've got. I'm just going to put a more defined branch in here. just a slightly thicker. One, just to give that area just a little bit of density. Okay. Okay, right. I think I'm going to leave that for now. So really, you're just looking for that feeling of a bubbling waterfall. I have got some watercolour pencils here, which you could work into areas if you wanted to. Again, this is if you want more detail, texture, a little bit more colour. It's quite, you know, you can sort of bring areas out with the watercolour pencils. So if you fancy putting a little bit of extra texture, extra colour in these areas, then, you know, but again, it's, you know, you're sort of fussing a little bit with this, you know, if you want a little bit more movement. Again, it's down to personal taste as to what happens with this. You know, if you do want more detail, then, you know, go ahead. But the more you work it, the more it becomes less free. So if you're looking to loosen up your painting style, then, you know, please don't fuss with this too much. Now, I'm just going to quickly take this masking tape off. Now, I have said in the past, you've got to be careful with masking tape because it does adhere really strongly to the paper. So if you feel like it's going to do that, then use a hairdryer, put it on low. It'll be a bit noisy for the moment. And just peel it. Got to use both my hands here. Peel it off very gently, okay, with the hairdryer. I'm just going to do the rest without sound so that you don't have to listen to it. Okay, so there we have the final picture with the tape removed. I'm just going to move it up and down so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so you can see that the edge works really nicely, and you know, it's something that you could put away and come back and work into again and again and again, but just enjoy the texture of it. Okay, please send me some images if you want to share, and I can leave comments for you if you want to receive comments or feedback. All right, I hope you enjoy it. I hope the weather improves. It's absolutely torrential rain here at the moment, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.